Welcome to the Leadbeam Legends podcast, where we break down go-to-market in restaurant tech and POS industries. This podcast is brought to you by Leadbeam, the #1 field sales platform for POS and restaurant tech. Today, we have a very special guest, Erica Gomez. She's currently leading Sales Enablement and Training at Slice, one of the fastest growing POS and restaurant tech companies in the world, hiring over 50 plus territory field reps.
Yeah.
Erica, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So I really want to start just by learning a little bit about you. You're now leading enablement at one of the fastest growing companies, in New York and in the US. How did you get to this point? What kind of brought you here? And, I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, I mean, what brought me to restaurant tech? No clear path. I'm sure everybody kind of gives a similar answer. I actually studied to be an anthropologist. Which for those that don't know is basically the study of cultures and how communities come together and then form a society. Little did I know that's kind of sales in a nutshell, right? And so, one can argue maybe that was designed that way, maybe it wasn't. But started out at Equinox, fell in love with sales at Equinox. A lot of my growth and development happened there. I was there for about 12 years, from sales to managing portfolios, to looking at P&Ls, understanding kind of the ecosystem of a business. Then went to WeWork, which I fell in love with, and that's when I got really close to entrepreneurs, from freelancers to, individuals and startups, really figuring out how they can grow to the next level. And at that point, I was still doing a lot of owner and operator. So I was basically the director of sales there. And I found that I really loved working with entrepreneurs. It was the first time I was working in more of a B2B motion. And then, there was a lot going on at WeWork at that time. Then COVID hit. Then started working for a mental or behavioral health company called Spring Health. And that's where I got a lot of depth into the B2B motion. And then, the rest is history. I found Slice. Basically, a recruiter reached out to me and said, we're growing, we're scaling, and we want to write the playbook. We want to do it together. I met with the exec team, and I had a great experience, and the rest is kind of history.
So you've had a lot of different experiences, B2B, B2C, with, Equinox being true, B2C sales.
Yes.
I used to be in fitness technology. I know a lot of studio owners and fitness owners, and your whole job is really to bring people in, make them feel comfortable, make them really fall in love with you and your gym, because that's what's going to keep them around longer. In our pre-interview, you had one core philosophy that you wanted to mention that was B2B or B2C specific, and that's person to person.
Yep.
Can you unpack that, what that means, and how that's kind of impacted your entire way of thinking through enablement and sales and leadership?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. One of the things that I learned in my sales career, I've been in sales for over 20 years, and then, on my LinkedIn, it says sales operator, turned into enablement. And what I learned in my sales experience was that in anything you do, people don't change unless there's a reason to change. Like, think about your personal life, right? A haircut, change your outfit, whatever the case is. You're not going to change unless you identify that there's a problem and a reason to change. And so whether it's B2B or B2C, the reason why I say it's always people to people or human to human is you have to understand what's going on with that individual, in so much that you understand their pain points, you understand what's going on, but you cannot kind of sit in their pain and truly understand and empathize with what's going on. So that's the reason why I talk about it being people to people. And then the second reason is because it's all based on relationships. So no matter where you're doing B2C, selling an Equinox membership, not easy at that time, still is one of the most premier membership options. You're talking to people about something really emotional, their health, right? And so being at Equinox was a blessing in that way, where I was able to quickly figure out how to connect with someone and form a relationship pretty quickly in a really personal way. And then on the B2B side, while it might not seem as emotional of a conversation or an interaction, at the end of the day, you're still forming a relationship, because that person is looking to understand, is this the right service for me? And it's, as we know now, companies are spawning from the earth all the time. So it's really about the relationship you form with the buyer. Sure, it's about the services and the features and the products, but it's less about that. It's really about the relationships. So the reason why I say it's human to human is because no matter in what sector you're in, B2C or B2B, the relationship is what matters most. And the ability to deeply understand that person's problem and their pain points is what matters. And now, unfortunately, a lot of sales professionals don't go deep. It's the way it was 20 years ago, and I wish we were back there in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I don't, because we depend so much on tools and we depend so much on other efficiencies, which are great. But we have forgotten what it's like to be a sales professional and go back to those core skills.
So I've a ton to break down from that. First of all, you said you wish you could go back 20 years ago and how selling was.
Yeah.
How would you say selling was different? Yes, there would be less. You don't have the sales lofts and the outreaches and the gongs and all of those, jazzy tools, or they are almost legacy tools at this point. But what would you say is like the major differences and why people aren't going deep with pain and maybe 2025 versus maybe 2005? Yeah.
I think one of the main things is we focus a lot on outcomes because we have all these tools. There's paralysis, by analysis, and there's constant reporting. All these tools tell us different things, and that's great. It's great to have a flashlight in a dark room, right? I get that. But at the end of the day, it's the behaviors that drive those outcomes, that drive the numbers on the scoreboard or the dashboards. And so we focus less on the behaviors and we just stare at data to try to find the problem. The behaviors, examples of those, core sales skills, you can read any of the great books out there. I think of immediately relationship management. I think of immediately active listening. That sounds simple. I think people hear it and they're like, yeah, that's obvious. Then why are there literally books about that one topic on active listening and the ability to recall? Emotional intelligence, having the ability to be self-aware. Like these are things we don't focus on and spend enough time on, especially with individuals entering the sales industry. We tell them to use these tools. We tell them to use value-based selling, and we hope and pray they figure it out along the way. But more companies should be focusing, and we see a lot of that more. I see a lot more podcasts getting into it, which is great. But that's what I mean why I wish we were going back to the days of the old age where 20 years ago, it was like, hey, before you touch anything or call anyone, have a conversation with me. Let's see if you can relate to what I'm talking about. Let's see if you can make me the center of the story. Let's see if you're great at storytelling and talking about whatever it is you want to talk about in a way that helps me have a natural kind of conversation with you where I don't feel being sold. And so that's what I mean by going back into the day and really focusing on those skills.
Yeah, and it really comes down to actually listening. Whether it's active listening, but it's actually hearing you and your problems and trying to be a problem solver out there, but not trying to solve every problem, but actually listening to being, what is the hardest thing you're trying to solve today? Can you help? Great. If not, maybe I know someone who can help you. And just trying to help is something I like to really dig in on. One thing that I think is really interesting about the space now that you're selling in is it's not necessarily big B2B.
Yeah.
And it's not B2C. These are owner operators who run their lives like they're people.
Yep.
And they're doing everything. Like, how does that conversation selling into like a one-person pizza store differ than maybe selling a big executive or selling in the B2C world? From my understanding, it kind of straddles both.
It's a hybrid.
Little bit,
Absolutely.
Right?
Agreed.
Is there something specific that's different when selling into that market, though?
I would say the biggest thing is it's still high touch. I think oftentimes, especially with SMB or restaurant owners that own mom and pop shops, it can feel like, oh, you just go in there. It's super transactional. It kind of mirrors maybe F&B industry. I have found very quickly that is not the case. It's deeply personal. This is someone's name on the door. It represents a family legacy. There's a lot of roots and history there. And so because of that, it's still high touch in the sense that if you say you're going to do something, you better do it. Yeah. They will chase you down. And you still got to show up. You got to show up. And even when it's hard and they call you and there's a problem, you still got to show up and you have to stay focused on the relationship. So it's still high touched in that way. even though it might not feel like that is like the natural way to go about it. It's definitely deeply personal, as I talked about. These individuals are checking their checking account to make sure that they can pay for their kids' college, to make sure they can cover payroll. It's not the company's money. This is their money. It starts and stops with whatever it is on their banking app. And then it's a little bit B2B because the cycles can be short, right? You can sell something within a week, but sometimes those conversations can take, depending on the complexity of what we're talking about, 30 to 45 days. I won't say in B2B, 45 days is a long time. Enterprise is more of like a year type of sales cycle, but it can be long in that way as well. And there can be multiple stakeholders. Oftentimes owners have an individual, maybe their son or daughter, that they're going to pass the business on to. And so while they may not be the decision maker, they're still like the operations manager, and they want that person's insight. And so we find that bringing those individuals into the conversation early is incredibly important too, which follows kind of like, a little bit of a MEDPIC methodology. So there are a lot of similarities, but I would say it's a hybrid. And if I had to anchor or over index on one, it's the B2C and going back to like making sure that you show up, you focus on the relationship, and you're having a real kind of like personal interaction that doesn't feel transactional, more so than some of the other aspects that I mentioned on the B2B side.
Definitely. I used to sell into the fitness space in the B2B world, and people want it to be transactional because that's how sometimes the initial deal sizes are. But what they also want, these business owners, they also want an end-to-end solution, which I know is something that, Slice talks about a lot, of owning the entire experience for these pizzerias.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, with the whole person-to-person relationship selling process that you've really come to create and come to build and really, highlight, is it possible to build a playbook around that that relies on genuine relationships and actually building connections? And how do you think about training reps so that they actually build these relationships and they're not just trying to sell another deal to make another buck and get to quota?
Yeah. I don't think, it's funny. I see so many playbooks pop on LinkedIn, they click and it's like, or comment here, dog barks, I don't know, whatever. And it's like, that is so interesting. And then, I definitely have fell for those. I open it and I'm like, yeah, and, I can't put 20 years into a playbook. I can't. And I trust me, I've talked to a few different people and I'm like, maybe I should, maybe this is the way things are going. And then what I've noticed is you just can't. It's super dynamic. It's super niche. It's very situational. I'm not saying those that are doing it, shout out to those that are doing it. That's great. I think it's directionally helpful, especially for people entering the sales industry where there's no gate on how to learn. There's no degree. I think there's like 4 colleges now that are actually adding sales as an acumen to achieve a degree in.
Don't take me go down that. I can go down the path all day.
We would have been cranking it. We would have been killing it. So playbooks are good. I think it's natural for humans to want to organize chaos. And so that's why playbooks exist. They have a purpose. They should be really slim. They should focus on, best practices, KPIs, what a weekly target should look like, things like that. It should be, something that they can grab and go in times when they're either starting their career at a company and or there's, they kind of hit a roadblock and they need to think more creatively. But I don't think playbooks is how sales professionals develop. So my training program really focuses on going back to, okay, what are the core behaviors that every sales professional needs to have in order to have repeatable success? Less about filling the pipeline, closing a few deals this week or next month, but if you're truly a sales professional, you're always thinking long term. And so I think about what are those aspects that we can focus on that are more intangible. So sales acumen, I can teach that. That's very tangible. That's great. But what is the intangible that I can't teach that some people need to come with, right? So things like curiosity. I can't teach people that. You got to come with that. Those are certainly things that we look for. But if those people bring those traits, so I say you bring the will, I'll bring the skill. What I bring to the table is essentially the ability to help them be emotionally intelligent, have an authentic conversation that feels like, we're having a conversation about the business, but at the end of the day, you also made a friend, and hopefully the person on the other side of the table feels that way as well. We focus a lot about resilience, right? I think being a sales professional requires a lot of stamina. Let's just say that. A lot of people also will focus on things like grit. And these are things that you hear them and I'm like, well, you either have it or you don't, Erica. And it's like, yes, to a degree, I agree with you. Like, there's certain things you can't teach. But there is a way within an onboarding experience, if you develop it and curate it the right way, that you can train someone to get through and be able to acquire some of those skills through constant repetition and things like that. And so that's basically what the training program looks like, the broad strokes of it. Not to say we don't have playbooks or anything like that. That's definitely important, but it's not the core experience that the new hires are experiencing at Slice.
Especially because playbooks can always be changed.
100%.
You're always evolving. You're releasing new features. You're seeing what's working, new products, new types of businesses that you're targeting. It's always going to be expanding. And I think it's really difficult to keep any playbook actually truly up to date with what's best in class right now.
Right. And how many times does that happen?
Yeah. I mean, you have that stale playbook sitting there.
Right.
And then you also have your competitors changing their playbooks, and you are, selling against competitors in a different way. And it's just really tough. I'm curious though about, all those intangible skills that you mentioned. You mentioned curiosity, you mentioned, grit, and you mentioned that some of them can be taught, but some of them, it's like, comes down to recruiting and having the right people joining the team. Is there something specific you do in the hiring process, or your team does in the hiring process, to vet for those types of skills?
Yeah, I think, similar to other organizations, it's a multi-layered interview kind of cadence. We do have a case study, as many companies nowadays do. We really want to make sure that we're assessing, like, okay, you said you can do X, Y, and Z, right? And be able to demonstrate that. We can kind of tell that in the case study. I would say recently I've been added to a lot of the interviews, which has been really helpful, because at the end of the day, what gets recruited enters onboarding. And so I need to understand like what's coming in as well. And that has been incredibly helpful, because then I can help make that decision with the other people on the steering committee of that, interview, that candidate, for example. And we can decide together, like, based on what we're going to ask of them when they're onboarded, is this person capable of doing that based on what we saw? So it adds just a little extra element to the conversation as well.
Got it. So it's less so you're asking if they're curious, but you put them through a case study where if they're not starting with discovery, you're probably in for some, it might not be the best candidate.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not, it's wild how many times we can end an interview and someone doesn't have questions. That still is like foreign to me. Right. You are literally learning about a brand new company. You could be the best at research. You could be best at, looking at watching interviews, listening to podcasts. There's still so much you can ask. I hate to say use ChatGPT, but like there's so many tools, right, that you can go to an interview and ask questions, and still there are people who don't ask questions. So it's a little bit of poor interviewing. Unfortunately, people don't get trained to do that either. But yeah, there are certain things we can see in the interview process.
The thing that bugs me the most about the end of an interview it's no questions is the worst, but the second worst is, let me actually pull up my questions that I have. I'm like, when did when did that become part?
Yes.
Like, are they your questions, or are they the questions on the paper
now
right
I know
now?
where you got them.
It's just, you mentioned the whole 10, 20 years ago of the whole how sales has been different. And you would be flown out to an interview across the country to be a sales rep for a company 10 years ago. And you weren't bringing notes in to do to ask your questions. It would be, you have to just ask your questions.
Yeah. You can stare someone in the eye. You can see where they get jittery. There's a lot of value to the way things were in the past.
I think that actually lends into kind of the increase of Zoom, though. And for people just got really comfortable on Zoom and having their notes on the side of the screen. I know a lot of your reps are, on the road. How does training differ, like, for reps who are visiting people in person versus reps who might be inside sales reps that you've trained before?
Yeah. So it's 100% the same. We put everyone through the same program. While there is idiosyncrasies regarding the job, doing something inside 100% by phone and being in the field, for sure, there are nuances there. And we address those typically at the end of onboarding, so it feels more realistic. But at the end of the day, I believe that relationship that you're curating by phone or in person, there are some small differences to go about that based on obviously being in person and not, but they go through the same program. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier that I caught. That was something that you said, a sales professional. And I don't think throughout this entire conversation you've said the word sales rep.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is a conscious decision that you're making by saying sales professional versus sales rep. In your view, what are the key habits or mindset differences between a sales representative or a sales rep and a sales professional?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main differences between a sales rep and a sales professional is the sales rep is going to be focused on the short term. Am I hitting my target? Am I doing what I need to do for, kind of short-term success? And then the sales professional is looking at a way longer trajectory because they see it as a career. And so, a part of me wishes that in the sales industry there was some type of gate that allows you to understand, like, are you a serious sales professional or are you just a sales rep? Because we can go on Fifth Avenue now and trip over 30 people that call themselves sales professionals. And then you kind of look at how they manage their business and talk to them and you're like, I feel so uncomfortable just talking to you. Like, how is it that you speak to other people? How do people allow you to do this? And again, I extend grace because maybe they just weren't trained. Maybe they just weren't really well trained. Like, there are a lot of companies doing some really great things with onboarding and upskilling, and there are a lot of companies that are just checking the box to say they have training. And I think that all starts with the executive team. Like, our executive team is fully behind everything that I do. They are super inquisitive. They come from a place of curiosity. We do not tolerate mediocrity. And so they are constantly like, do what it takes, do whatever it takes to make us great. And so it starts there. Whereas I've worked at other companies, it could be higher ego. There seems to be like this playbook and
It's how we've always done it.
Yeah, and this philosophy of like, don't question it, just do what I've asked you to do for, because we've been doing it for decades, et cetera. Yeah, you're not going to live long. You're not going to stay competitive doing it that way. But again, everything starts from the top down. And so with that being said, I'd say the main difference is, a sales rep is really focusing on their number, and then a sales professional is thinking more long term. They're more strategic, right? So they're saying, okay, this conversation isn't leading to a yes now, but they see kind of the forest through the trees. They see the opportunity. They hear things that could be an opportunity in the near future. They understand the value of checking in, using education versus checking in to like have the same conversation. They're like almost charismatic about it. Like they just have a different approach because they are not thinking about the target. They're thinking about what is the play here, and it might be a week, or it might be 3 months, or it might be 6 months, but they can sit in that and then manage their pipeline accordingly to be able to kind of see it long term.
So I think just to boil that down a little bit, I think a sales professional, you said thinking long term, I'd almost say is thinking consultative.
100%. Yes.
They've grasped the industry. They've grasped the product. They've grasped the person on the other side of the phone. And then they can, based on all the knowns, they're able to now prescribe what's likely the best thing either now or maybe it's not the right time. Let's reconnect in 6 months. And then they actually follow up in 6 months. And then maybe they follow up in 3 months and say, I know you said 6 months, but I saw a new store open up next door. Would you mind introing me? Because I know we had such a good conversation the last time we spoke.
Yep.
And we're going to reconnect in a month or two.
Yeah, I think you're right. I agree with you. Where I always love a good debate. Sorry.
No.
I agree with you. Where I would add to that is that some reps think they're doing consultative selling. Like they really do. They believe that they're doing all of those things. But in addition to that, they're not planting the seeds for the harvest. They're like, when I'm in the moment, I'm doing that, Gabe. I'm doing all the things. And then I call on that date and time and I'm doing that. But they're not doing everything around that needs to happen in surround sound. So what I mean by that is like, they're not taking the time to develop themselves. Again, that's a sales professional. That's not a rep. They're not taking the time to think ahead. It's a game of chess, not checkers. That's a sales professional, not a sales rep. And so, yes, I agree with you that they are looking at the bigger picture, the business, rather than very singular in thinking. But there's more to it that's happening in surround sound that says this person's like locked down and going to be in this industry. This is what they want to do. It's what they're passionate about. It's not a short-term play to essentially, help them with whatever they're doing next, God knows what.
So it's a level above that. It's
Yes.
more so, where am I going above and beyond to learn the craft of selling?
Correct. Exactly.
Am I connecting with mentors? Am I taking classes on how to be a consultative seller? Am I learning different philosophies? Am I reading the books? Am I watching the YouTubes? Or am I doing the podcasts? Because I know that by doing these things, it's going to potentially suck today.
Yeah.
And I might not be able to hang out on a Friday night because I'm going to a networking event with a bunch of sales executives. But 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll look back on all of the relationships and connections you made, all of the things that you learned, and realize you're 20 times farther along than if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
What type of resources do you see as like quality resources versus like potentially a waste of time? Because there's definitely, in terms of the quality of the materials, there's a big range.
Yeah, there is. I'm not a reader. I have learned to become one, but even so, I'm like, all right, let me wait till a section really kind of pops out. I've read some great books. But for me, it's definitely podcasts. Like, shout out to all of you doing, the Lord's work out here with sharing and democratizing information, just giving it out to everyone. I wish we had that a while ago. And that way, I wish it wasn't 20 years ago. But I think, for me, we live in a world, especially, I think it's Gen Z. It's the TikTok era. Everyone learns through videos and these podcasts. So my recommendation is, if you want to learn as much as possible, just listen to and watch as many as you can, throughout the workday and during breaks and things like that. I also think there's a lot of great courses and being provided. Chris Orlob has a really great course. I forget, exactly how many is in the series. I don't know if it's a 3-part series, but he does one on discovery. He goes very deep on discovery. And so those are just like resources that I would recommend, getting into, because you're taking yourself out of your role and you're learning from others, and they put you in a group setting. So you have the opportunity to learn from others' mistakes as well, which I believe salespeople in general, there's a lot of studies that show kind of how salespeople learn and what they gravitate to, which is also a piece of what we embed in onboarding. We're setting up the ecosystem and the conditions for salespeople to succeed. We're not onboarding engineers. We're not onboarding, implementation people. We're focusing, and the whole curriculum is designed for how salespeople learn and retain information. And so for those reasons, I think those are just some great options out there.
Yeah, I think the podcasts specifically can be really powerful, like as well as like, the TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is. But I think it's important to take in a lot of different types of material because sometimes the advice is bad. Yeah. And you can't trust every advice. But the more you listen to it, the more you're able to say, like, that was shit advice, or that was really good advice. I want to listen to more of them. So I think that's really important. I know there's a couple communities that I've heard really good things about. I know, like, Pavilion, which is, shout out them, Sales Assembly. Yep. There's a lot of good communities that can get you involved with a lot of different sellers, a lot of different leaders, where they actually set up different mentorship, mentee programs. Okay. And then, there's a lot of sales coaches, which if you find the right ones, can be huge for your development, because you're in a room with 100 other people who want to sell, and they bring you in person a lot of the time, and you get to talk about what you're actually facing and feeling throughout the day-to-day grind that sometimes people who aren't in it don't know. And it's just a place to talk about that, learn from each other. And then, yes, there's a coach or two coaches trying to improve you. But a lot of the time in sales, it's not always rocket science. Yeah. You can
famous last words. Now I'm just kidding.
A sales rep can help another sales rep.
Right. Yes.
It's just hard to do it when you're listening to it yourself.
Yes, 100%.
Now, sales enablement and onboarding, like that isn't just a point in time thing that you're doing. What is your technique to make sure that the coaching and the development that you do at the organizations that you've been at actually sticks with the reps? Because it can't go in one ear out the others.
Yeah.
And that's a really important factor
Yep.
if your reps are actually going to ramp correctly and succeed, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few things that I've learned in my sales career. So I started doing onboarding, early on in my sales career, did really well. And people would say like, oh, can you teach the new hires this? Eventually got into leadership. Oh, can you teach leadership sessions on this? And what I've learned is that if you don't put it into practice right away for them, it just kind of is a 747 over their head. They'll remember it for the moment. Maybe they'll implement it in the next 24, 72 hours. That's great. But unless you're kind of embedding it into their day-to-day, it's not going to be retained. So that's one mistake I learned early on and now use it all the time. The second thing is like the power of stories goes a really long way. And so kind of like what you were saying about the communities that curate those environments, whether it's mentors or individuals just kind of venting about what's going on in best practices, sales professionals learn from that. They learn so much from stories. That's why shadowing is by far the number one way to learn. There's basically an algorithm that says sales professionals learn 70% from their peers, 20% from their leaders, and then only 10% from other training mechanisms, which is crazy. I shouldn't have a job based on that. What that's saying, though, is we set the foundation, and then when they're out there with their colleagues or with their, even in communities like you mentioned, they're going to retain that information more from those stories and those best practices. Now, the downside of that, to your point a few minutes ago, is you don't really know if those people are doing the right thing. So they could also be picking up a lot of bad habits, which is unfortunate. And so a lot of the focus on onboarding is we teach them the science and the art. Some people will say sales is science or art. We argue it's both. You got to know the science. It is truly, like you said, it's not that hard to figure out. 1 + 1 = 2. It's typically a numbers game, has been since the dawn of time. But it's also art, which is how do you have those conversations? How do you explain something that is complex in a simple way that's super palatable and prompts thought, prompts someone to say like, oh, I'd never thought about doing it differently, but now, based on what you said, I'm interested. And so we focus a lot of the onboarding on that. Now, in terms of retention, we basically do teach, show, do. I didn't make it up. I forgot who did. Someone taught it to me about 10 years ago. And that's basically how I design the onboarding, is we teach them what we expect them to do. We show them what that looks like and feels like. So I'll do it myself with a bunch of different people. I'll let them do it with me. And then we have them do it immediately. And we kind of rinse and repeat that based on the core skills that we're implementing.
I learned the same approach.
Yeah,
Teach, show, tell. It's
right?
great.
It works.
It's so good. It works. But the most important thing is the feedback loop. So it's, teach, show, tell, and then someone though needs to watch that tell so that we can pass that feedback loop around.
Yes.
That's super helpful. I think in terms of, I have a couple questions left that I want to get to.
Yeah.
For someone considering a move into restaurant technology from maybe another industry, maybe it's B2B, maybe it's B2C, maybe it's not sales at all, because I think some of the best sales people and sales professionals actually come from other industries. What's the single most important thing that they should know on day one that will make them successful?
I would say my best advice is to make sure the owner is at the center of everything. And I say that because a lot of sales professionals, myself included, I am not, perfect. Ego, like we're competitive by nature, right? Like we're social butterflies, we're conversationalists, we're connectors. A lot of us can have an ego, and that has to be checked at the door. I think in restaurant tech, one of the things I picked up on is, if you don't understand the owner, you don't understand their industry that they sit in, you don't understand their challenges, you don't understand how the economy is impacted. If you don't really get it, they are going to sniff you out very quickly. And they are really authentic in how they communicate. I'll just share that. And you'll have a really hard time trying to get past that. And so because everything is predicated on developing trust, you have to be really savvy at figuring out how do you develop trust with someone, a random stranger that you just walked into their business. And so that is not easy. And so for anyone entering restaurant tech, that would be my number one piece of advice. Understand the owners, understand the day-to-day, understand the industry that they're in, what can impact them positively or negatively. Know the trends more so than they know the trends, and then find a way to develop trust as quickly as possible, and try not to tarnish that, because once you lose it, it's really hard to get back.
Yeah, I agree. I think the most important thing as well is just being an industry expert in anything you're doing. And that doesn't always come day one. But if you can actually show that you have an interest and you understand what that owner and potentially other owners are feeling,
Yes.
and truly empathize with them for what's going on in their business, you're going to go a lot farther. You're going to be a lot better. So yeah, I want to end with a quick fire.
Yeah.
What's the hardest industry to sell in? Fitness, real estate, or restaurants?
Ooh, I'm going to go with fitness. 100%.
One daily habit that every sales professional should adopt.
One daily habit that every sales professional do something. Can I do two?
Sure.
One is personally do something that you love every day. Like, I start my day at the dog park every day. I just love being around animals. I know I'm good, my dog's good, we're good. The day's gonna be good. But just do something you love. Some people work out, some people do walks and meditate, whatever. Like, you got to be ready for what's out there. Going back to like resilience and having the stamina, like you have to be ready for the day. So that's one. And I would say the second one is do also something that scares you. Do something that scares you. Talk to that owner that said no a million times, might have, used very different words. Like, do something that scares you, because at the end of the day, if you're not growing, you're dying. And honestly, you're never going to really know what you're capable of unless you really push your limits. And I think that's advice for anybody in any career, honestly.
I love that. Do something you love and do something you hate every day. I think that lends yourself to a very happy life. LinkedIn for sales development. Is it helpful or hurtful?
I think it's helpful. Yeah, it is helpful, because enablement as a function, like, we're young in this game. Like, we're not a marketing, we're not a sales function. We're very young. I'd say like maybe 7 or 8 years it's been recognized as a function. It's old school, people call it training and development, but it's so much more than that. And not enough people know what enablement does. They still think we're the training team. But it's like, if you could only come back behind the curtain. So I'm going to go with helpful. Shout out to everyone doing what they're doing on LinkedIn.
Yeah, my background is revenue operations.
Okay.
That's all like 7, only been around, 8-10 years now. Yeah. And what's a beautiful thing is how when it gets into like the mainstream and the light, and when I think about sales enablement specifically, everyone says sales managers don't have time to actually coach because they're writing deals and they're trying to, help their reps close every deal without actually up-leveling each and every rep on the team. And that's where I think sales enablement truly, truly lends in. It's like, these reps are going to be here in good organizations. And that's one of the things I love about Slice is everyone's there, it feels like, for 8, 10. Like, the leadership team is really like, they've been there a long time. And it's because they've developed people and they haven't outgrown them, and they've just continued to up-level everybody on the team. What's the best piece of sales advice you ever received?
I'd say be in the moment. Oftentimes as salespeople, we want to think about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And we miss a lot of the rich information being shared in the conversation, and just being in the moment and really trying to kind of, empathize with what the person is sharing on the other side of the table. I would say being in the moment is the best advice also, because for me, I love trying to solve, I'm a problem solver by nature. I will run towards a fire when everyone's like, getting the hell out of here. It's just who I am. It's how I'm built. And so you can't do that unless you understand what's going on and you understand all of the nuances to what's going on. And so, I always tell the people that I'm training, like, I love discovery. Like, I'll play this game all day. Like, they hate it. They get nervous. They jitter. You could just tell it's not in their nature, but I just love learning about people. It's just who I am. I can't turn it off. And so you can't do that if you're not being present. And it comes through. right? It comes through, and I think that has helped me a lot in my sales career as well. Like, people genuinely know that I'm here to be here, to spend time with you, to understand where I can help or not help. And to your point, like, if I can connect you and we can make sense of it a different way, that's okay too. But they absolutely know that when they leave time with me, that I was here. And I wasn't thinking about dinner, and I wasn't thinking about how I can get your money in my pocket, but there was an actual authentic experience that we had.
Active listening, right?
Yeah.
Erica, thanks for coming on. If anyone wants to find you, is there an email, LinkedIn, or is there anything last that you want to share?
Erica Gomez on LinkedIn. I would say reach out to me. I'm not one of those people that says reach out and, I never respond. I actually do respond. You usually respond with like, hey, lots going on this week. Let's connect next week. But yeah, I was always super responsive. I'm also on Sales Enablement Collective. So if anybody's on those Slack channels, you can send me a DM as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.